Here we are, Patrick. Thanks for joining us for this little extra episode. We are not really, it's not a crisis video, it's not an emergency video, but you wrote a wonderful piece today on the heels of the Canucks losing game 4 in Edmonton about the elephant in the room, Elias Pettersson. And you've written a number of times through the playoffs so far about his lack of production. And so that's not necessarily new. What is new is that his coach called him out. Rightly so. He talked about passengers. He's not the only one. We'll get to more of that in a second. But singled out Pettersson when asked about him not putting up the numbers that I think people expect him to. One thing I would like your thoughts on, there's been all this speculation around, is he injured? Well, we know how the NHL is so amateur hour in terms of how they disclose injuries. But the coach would obviously know if he's injured. Does Tocchet call him out like that if he knows that he's dealing with a physical problem?
Well, that's exactly it. And, if there was something he was dealing with down the stretch, which I think is possible, it makes sense if you think about the way Tocchet talked about him. There's certainly several points talked about guys being bagged up and not really going after Pettersson, but lately he has. He's been highly critical of the player. They need more. And, that is why I asked him about Leon Draisaitl perhaps as a comparator. Like, there's Draisaitl, a guy we know is hurt and who is still having a strong series, who's finding a way to make a difference. And they're different players. Like, Draisaitl, part of his success is he's just a big, strong guy, right? Like, he's a massively talented, massively athletic, big man. And Pettersson is tall and will play physically, but he's not the same kind of player, quite obviously. So, that he needs him to dig. He needs to find a way. The Canucks are not scoring the way they were with Pettersson on the ice. They did for most of the season. They're certainly not shooting the way they were with him on the ice. He's not shooting the way that he was. We're left to conclude there's a confidence issue, and that certainly is what was projected. He was careful in his answers, and he's trying not to give away what he can, but he did at least try to answer most of the questions that were put to him today. And his position essentially being, I know I'm not playing well. I put it to him, this is, are you having fun? He basically said it's fun playing the playoffs. So is it fun for him not to be succeeding? That is clear that that's not fun, and that I think is what's grating at him. But here we are. There's the Canucks are in the second round. They have how many? He's barely been. In fact, there's been moments like he won that faceoff before the Brock Besser goal on Tuesday night. Like, that was a massive moment for him, and yet there are still other moments that didn't happen. Some of the element is the black holes on his wing. Ilya Mikheyev has 1 goal in 60 games. Pettersson did acknowledge, yeah, sure, it would be good to have guys who are producing on my wings, but also being like, listen, this is in the end, I can only control one thing, and that's me. And he knows the production's not there. And certainly we've come so far. People are like, well, what about, who is this guy? And I'm like, he was the third start in the whole league in January. He was at the top of his game at the All-Star game, and everything has fallen away since. And he is in a pit of lack of confidence like I think we've rarely seen on a player in this town.
So, this is an interesting story. The one cliche you'll always hear from everyone this time of year is your best players have to be your best players. In the salary cap era, your contract is an albatross. Maybe that's weighing on him since he signed the new deal. But which camp are you in? Is he being dragged down by playing on a line that doesn't give him the support? Or is this more about him? One issue is, yes, if he was setting up all these chances and his teammates weren't bearing them, that would be certainly leans to that argument. And there are a lot of people who buy into that. But at the same time, one of the reasons people in this town came to love Pettersson was that shot. And we're not, like, I can't even think of scoring chances he's missed. Like, he's not, I think he's trying. Like, I know other people have criticized his effort. I don't know that you could do that. But something is clearly so off because he's not even in the conversation.
No, exactly. Listen, there's the power play goal he scored the other night. That was a fabulous play by JT Miller, and the kind of finish you expect him to have. I will note he did have 6 shot attempts in game 4. He had a chance on the left side where he tried to pick the top corner, and Calvin Pickard just got a shoulder on it. Like, There is there, but you still go back to, say, against UC Saros when he hit him in the face, whatever game that was, game 5, I think it was. There's been too much of that, or the game 2 miss where he badly hooked the shot wide. Is his stiff? Is it equipment? Maybe. He did admit in the past that he was using the wrong stick. He did fiddle with his stick before this season, but he was playing so well. It just seems hard to imagine that it's something like that. That at the end of the day, I think there have been some injury issues, and maybe there still is a wrist problem he just doesn't want to talk about. But the thing we're left with, because his coach is going so hard at him and said he's not hurt, it's about confidence and about finding your way and just will. Maybe it's just will to win, which is odd because this is a guy who is a competitor. He loves competitive. He loves going up against the best players. Think back to early in the Bruce Boudreau era when he's apparently went to Boudreau and said, I want to kill penalties. I want to help this team win. And now we're in a moment where they need him to win, and he's coming up with no answers, sometimes quite literally.
Again, his contract maybe makes him the lightning rod for criticism, but one of the things that's just been remarkable about this Canuck playoff run and this series is the Canucks have maybe been the beneficiary of some very poor goaltending on the Oilers' part.
Sure.
And it's remarkable the contributions they're getting from players like Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland. If you really look, if you go back to when you and I earlier in the year were doing these videos, and I think everyone was taken by surprise at how well the Canucks were doing. Like, they have got the top 3 scorers in the NHL. Quinn Hughes is like playing at an all-time level. I'm not going to criticize Quinn Hughes, but when you look at reputations are made in the playoffs. Like, this is when you think of those Linden performances, you think of those Sedin performances, the Burrows performances in those runs. Quinn Hughes, I'm not criticizing him, but no goals, 9 assists, 27th overall. Obviously we've got Pettersson, Roenick, also another guy struggling, maybe one of the guys they suggest was one of the passengers. Miller's numbers maybe aren't what he would like them to be, but he's still 15th in NHL playoff scoring. And he gives you so much at both ends of the ice, and he's emotional, and he's a leader. And of course, Besser's had a remarkable playoff.
Yeah.
But it's not just Pettersson, is it? Like, the Canucks are really being held up by guys maybe you didn't expect. If they were getting the contributions, like if Quinn Hughes was really playing out of his skin, like we've seen in some of the other, I'm an old guy, so I go back to Jeff Brown in '94 and how much he drove that run, or even Dan Hamhuis and Christian Ehrhoff, and they really stepped their game up in the playoffs. So we'll focus on Pettersson because he's the big number, he's the big guy, and he absolutely has to do better. But is there more blame to go around here?
Well, I mean, I would say the first round they struggled to generate offense, right? Like, they still scored. Brock Besser found the net, like he scored. Miller has 11 points. Quinn Hughes has 9 assists. Overall, I would say they've been uneven. This series has been a lot. It's weird to say, but the series has been a lot better for them than it was for Nashville, simply because of the way Edmonton plays. It's more wide open. The Canucks have had more moments, but they still haven't had enough, right? Like that. Like, you're left thinking about, I mean, they're playing a very defensive style, which is the style they were trying to play all year, but they still were finding more offensive opportunities in the regular season. Now, obviously, you're playing one of the best teams in the league now, so the story's different. But you never see those shifts where you're like, oh, wow, okay. You rarely see those shifts where you're like, oh, wow, this is going to happen. It's going to happen right here. And it's in fits and starts, and that's going to happen. But the third line has been pretty good. The Miller line's been pretty good. Although, you look at Miller. Miller was terrible in Game 4. I don't think there's any other way to put it. He looks sick. I think he's sick. There's clearly a bug going on. I mean, we asked Pettersson was stuffed up. You've heard for a couple of media sessions now over 5 or 6 days. Like, Pettersson sounds stuffed up. He admitted he's dealing with a cold. I think we have the impression that there's some kind of bug going around the team. And I found myself wondering if that's what was the deal with Miller, because like late in the game, Pettersson had that faceoff win, which was, I think, huge for his mentality. But that's the kind of faceoff usually JT Miller's taking. So the fact that Pettersson was taking it, to me, was a sign that maybe there's a player who's not. I mean, Miller struggled in the faceoff dot all night, which is unusual for him as well. But it just was a curious change in deployment. So maybe they just need to get, another night's sleep at home and put on some Vicks and drink some lemon ginger tea and wake up tomorrow and they'll all feel better and come out gangbusters and they'll win 6-1. I don't think that's going to happen, but Pettersson has a hat trick, right? Maybe that happens, but 6-1, I don't think it's going to happen. But you're right. You're not wrong. Like they were one shot from beating the Oilers in game 2, right? Like the overtime game. They were one mistake away from getting to overtime on Tuesday night, and then it's any shot could happen, right? Like, as weird as this all is, and they've been outshot, and they've been poor in third periods and all that, they're still 2-2. The narrative was very in their favor all of 24 hours ago. They're in this, and they aren't actually playing all that great, and they're still in it,
Yeah, but Patrick, I think the frustrating thing for people is no Demko.
Yeah.
Pettersson's doing nothing. Roenick's really struggling as well.
Yeah,
Hughes is playing good, not great. And so I think you look around at what you might expect from this team, and all you can do is wonder and go, man, if they got those top guys going and they get Demko back, how far could they go? And I think that's the worry.
Well, that's it.
I mean, I was a little surprised. I'm not a big hockey pool guy, but to see the top 3 playoff point producers are all Oilers.
Yeah.
Draisaitl hurt, dealing with this stuff. They had a short series in the first round. Draisaitl 1, McDavid 2, Evan Bouchard 3. I think that's a bit of a surprise to people.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's also a statement about how strong the top end of their team is and
where
they go. And that, look at
your best players have to be your best players.
Yeah,
it's a cliche, look at how it's true.
Yeah, look at how the Canucks won Game 1, and that was all about them being able to keep Connor McDavid from getting a shot off. And Game 3, Connor McDavid didn't have a point, right? Like it's no surprise that when the Oilers' best players are off, they struggle to win, and that is what the Canucks need to get back to if they're going to win the rest of the series.
Okay, great stuff, Patrick. More on the fly videos as we get them. Read all of Patrick's stuff at theprovince.com. Sign up for Canucks Report. You get our playoff posters. You get everything sent right to your inbox. Last thought, maybe someone should send Scott Mellenby's kids to the Oilers locker room. Tony Gallagher special. Shout out TJ. All right, Patrick, thank you. We'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. Catch you later, man.